Welcome to our 37th podcast. And today we'll be talking about scary stories of change management gone bad. What's one thing you can do now to escape the horrors of bad change management? Keep listening to find out.
Welcome to Harmonious Workplaces, a podcast about corporate culture, organizational change management, and workplace behavior. Harmonious Workplaces was started by independent consultants Rich Cruz, Ben Kleinman, and Cheryl Volpe to explore, challenge, and build on various organizational culture and change management concepts. It's a blend of theory and practice based on their personal and professional experiences working with companies of all sizes across various industries. If you own a business, lead a team, want new ideas about the corporate environment, or just want to listen to a group of consultants talking about how to make work more enjoyable, we invite you to sit back, relax, and dive in with us to Harmonious Workplaces.
Hello, Harmonious Workplaces listeners. Welcome back. And my name is Rich Cruz. And as usual, I am joined today by my co-host, Ben Kleinman. Hi, Ben.
Hey, everyone.
And Cheryl Volpe.
Hi, everyone.
And today we are going to be talking about scary stories of change management gone bad. I mean, we've all been there. We've all seen it. We've all seen the horrible things that can happen when things just don't go right in the workplace, right? It does kind of leave a scar, and it's something that's indelible. Oftentimes within the workplace, it really changes our culture and makes it harder for people to engage on future change efforts. So it can really sour an organization pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Have both of you experienced that before?
Oh, sure. Of course. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, let's tell some tales.
Get your marshmallows. Make your s'mores.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
Get your hot cocoa.
Gather around the campfire.
Gather around the campfire, friends.
We've done this before. We did this in, I don't remember what episode it was, and kind of sharing some of these, but
yeah, we talked about when change goes awry. I think that was maybe in the same vein as this, but maybe these are more egregious.
Insidious.
Yes. I think we had some agency in the previous discussion, too. I think we had to make some decisions around it. Or not make those decisions, as the case may have been.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
So what stories do you all have?
And to distinguish, these are the stories where you are helpless for most of the ride. You are a victim in a haunted house on a scary ride. Eventually, when it all comes to light, you hopefully have choices or can make a decision to escape the situation. But as we have often talked about, change initiatives, we're talking about if there even is a why communicated, right? And it still goes poorly.
Well, hopefully we've emerged and there's been enough time to where you can look back and have a chuckle and look at it as a good learning opportunity.
Agreed. Yeah. I think you should go first then, Ben, because it sounds like you are the best adjusted to your terrible story.
I'm still cringing with mine, so yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow, I can't wait. Yeah, there's some that I think are still active scars that you don't want to get near. But one of the ones that I think for our conversation today really stood out had to do with a company that I was working with some years ago. And this was sort of a situation where there was a much larger global company headquartered here in the U.S. They acquired a smaller company that was based overseas, not in the U.S. And it's a little bit of that typical acquisition type of scenario, but the integration didn't go well. And the change after that didn't go well. The reason why the bigger company was buying the smaller company was because the smaller company had some really amazing intellectual property, a data set that was just fantastic, technology tools for that industry that were just fantastic. And so the bigger company saw this as a real coup to get these folks. All well and good. 12 years later, they were still struggling to integrate, even at a basic level, the smaller company. IT systems hadn't been integrated, so you couldn't really easily email people, or you couldn't look up who was who at which company. So you didn't even know who was doing what. There was no real good cultural integration. So the smaller company had its own kind of, as you can imagine, a little bit smaller, a little bit more research and development type of company. They were very much like, let's do it and not worry about what breaks. And the bigger company has much larger issues if things go wrong. And they were a little bit more cautious and conservative. And so the cultures hadn't quite meshed. To me, the biggest problem, though, and what was still leading to this 12-year later issue of non-cultural happiness, was that the leader of the smaller company was someone who exhibited many of the dark triad traits that, Cheryl, you had done a really nice job in our prior episode laying out for us. This person was incredibly narcissistic, a bit Machiavellian, a bit sociopathic. And so you would be, as a junior person, in a meeting with this person, and it was clear that this leader was not interested, thought whatever you were presenting on was absolute bullwonky, and would even have moments where the leader would just take the mic, do his blah, 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 mic drop, I'm out, F-bomb to everyone, and apparently was legendarily known for dropping the F-bomb and walking off. And so that kind of thing to persist for 12 years was really scarring, and it made for a really weird dynamic. Really weird dynamic where the bigger company and the smaller company had plenty of people who wanted to collaborate. They saw the vision. They wanted to participate in each other's teams and bring things forward, sort of supercharge the effort. But there was always that kind of roadblock getting in the way. And so what was just staggering to me is that despite the bigger company having a really good culture, really values forward, really good people-focused organization, it was very clear that they spoke with one voice to one group and another voice to the other group, and that just caused all sorts of friction. And it was just mind-boggling to me why they never fired that one leader or sidelined that one leader who was causing such a problem to the whole cultural integration. It's one of those things I look back and I don't know. I mean, short of sidelining that person, I couldn't think of a way there was no working around. That person was the linchpin for everything that happened with the smaller company, made sure that he was in the loop in all the email chains. Nothing was approved that didn't go through him. So there was really no way to work around. There were just generations of people coming through the bigger company trying to manage this person, hold this person's hand, kind of soft pedal, whatever the word is, this person. And 12 years later, nothing had worked. And so it's just mind-boggling. And I would love any suggestions about how you deal with that, short of sidelining that person.
Right.
And I don't know why the leadership at the bigger company never did it. Maybe there was a clause in the buyout that said never going to happen. I don't know, but there you go. Scary.
It's interesting. Like, is it a fear of retaliation from this person?
Bigger company have lawyers that, I mean, you're a global company. They've got more lawyers that can handle anything than your average Joe.
Sure.
So I can't imagine it was a litigation fear.
I bet there were a ton of different ideas floating around, though, and speculation and sort of water cooler conversations about exactly why this man was allowed to stay in that position of power.
And you would have these junior folks present, and they would just get slammed. And I think it was like watching lambs go to the slaughter for many of the other folks at both companies who were just sort of at that sort of worker B level, director level and lower, manager level and lower. And you'd get after the meeting, all these people sort of saying, wow, Ben, we really feel badly that you just got the heck beat out of you and all that. And don't take it personally. And you did a great job. It's just it's just that leader, whatever. And wowza.
So you were at the receiving end directly.
Oh, I was not ever one that got dumped on personally, but I was part of initiatives where people were getting dumped on.
Mm-hmm.
I was sort of always an external consultant,
Witness,
helping with projects, helping with changes. Yeah, witnessing all that, and never feeling like it was. I don't know. I guess if I look back on it now, I probably would have taken a little bit of the mic back and said, you know what, dude, this is not cool. You can't do this. And what do I have to lose? Sure. I'm an external, right? So fire me, okay? But it didn't occur to me that I should have done that in the moment.
Which is I think that's a very common thing, where I've seen it. I've seen it in organizations where there's somebody who is kind of a bully boss. In fact, I think I've written a few things on the blog, about that type of thing, and how that is accepted by some of the executive leadership, and so that it becomes a cultural norm, which is it's like there's that flaming bag of what and it just keeps going, but just navigate around it. It'll be fine. It'll go up on its own, but that is, maybe this is something to talk about at some point in a future episode, is conflict resolution, right? Avoidance is certainly, it is a conflict strategy, but how effective could it be when
it's not usually very healthy?
Results in this, yeah,
right. Sure. And like you said, Rich, a lot of times you do just hope it'll work itself out. A person like that doesn't tend to persist when there's so many offensive violations of professional protocol and acumen, except in the rare situations, like you're saying, Ben, where no one else spoke up. There was some kind of power that seemed to be virtually untouchable that this one person possessed, and it went on.
Mm-hmm. I know there was chatter about it at the bigger company at the sort of senior mucky muck levels. I know that people were talking about it. I know that it had been surfaced, but I never was part of those conversations. The projects and the levels that I was working with were a little bit down from that. And so I don't know if they talked about appointing someone to deal with it, or they just sort of talked about it and said, this is just part of the territory of owning this smaller company. It's not as big as other problems, whatever it is. They're focused on meeting their numbers for Wall Street or some other issue that's come up. I don't know, but it was something that was a known quantity. And for something to be a known quantity, like Rich, you're saying that known bag of flaming yogurt for 12 years, that just smacks of almost dereliction of duty.
It does. It does. Yeah. Investment banking has rituals and procedures that are almost like a hazing, like that lambs to the slaughter that you were talking about, Ben, where,
Yeah. And I love your term from a prior where you called the head cheeses, they would call themselves masters of the universe.
Yeah.
I think that's how this evil leader saw himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a good place to take a break. Let's do this, because I want to go into some of Cheryl's story and just as soon as we get back. So we'll be right back. At Harmonious Workplaces, we believe work should provide purpose, satisfaction, and growth. We empower people to thrive by fostering environments where individuals can find meaning in their work and organizations can succeed through thoughtful, well-executed strategies. We're committed to making work better for the people who do it and the leaders who guide them.
To discover how Harmonious Workplaces can impact your organization, visit www.harmoniousworkplaces.com and book a free 30-minute information session with one of our consultants today. Again, that's www.harmoniousworkplaces.com.
And we're back. So we're talking about some scary stories of change management gone awry. And Ben was just sharing with us kind of a monster tale, right? And now, Cheryl, you're up.
I appreciate that. Compared to Ben's, that was really, really frightening, Ben. May I talk about two other stories before I talk about any of mine that were in the public sphere that we will remember, and they were disasters for enormous companies. 1985, I can't believe it was that long ago. It seems like yesterday, but New Coke. Do you remember when New Coke came out and it was
horrible.
Nobody liked it.
It took 79 days before they reintroduced the original flavor as, look, it's back. It almost seemed like it was planned.
Classic Coke,
classic.
right? Came back as classic Coke.
Classic. Yeah. And then, of course, the other one, I remember this like yesterday too, but when Microsoft launched that Vista, they had put such poor planning into that. They had overlooked massive compatibility issues. It was so hateful. People got so frustrated. They went back to Windows XP or just waited until 7 came out. I mean, that must have cost them untold
my gosh.
Millions.
For sure.
And it made them look really
For
bad.
sure.
I mean, the ding on our reputation. I mean, I think Coke survived. They clearly didn't take a permanent ding. Microsoft didn't take a permanent ding.
But everyone still jokes about it. I mean, it's one of those sort of cultural memes, right? Where people like, don't do that. That's going to be New Coke, man.
It is. It is. Which plays well into the story I would like to tell. And it's not as scary as it is hopeless in a way. The culture the culture, it was in investment banking. It was in the early 2000s. And there was a massive merge. The bank that I was in merged with another bank. And the other bank had a different culture. It was not as elite in reputation as the first bank. So naturally, those of us who were completely snobby about it resisted the change.
Yeah, sure.
And the company did everything they could to break that resistance down. They gave priority to the other company in the artwork for the new logo. We had to shred thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in business cards and letterhead that were fairly new, if I recall. The stuff had just come when this announcement happened, not the kind of thing that was thought about at the big meeting, right?
Sure.
And the elite bank CEO stepped down, and the other bank's CEO took over.
Became the,
Wow.
okay.
That's
All
a
right.
shocker.
And it sent a wave of destruction through morale, through inspiration, motivation. I don't know what kind of ding it must have had in productivity. And maybe because I was in the corporate end of things and not on the banking side, maybe it invigorated the bankers. Maybe the decision was seen as such a good one, but I happen to know it wasn't, right? It wasn't seen as a genius strategy in the merging of banks.
Mm-hmm.
When September 11th happened, the only offices of the new entity in the trade center were from the other bank.
Oh.
But now that both bank names were part of it, that sent panic through everyone who knew about both banks, not knowing where people were, but hearing that the trade center had some people from the combined activity in it, which I was not.
Yeah, sure.
That I was in Midtown. So it took a long time for that culture to recover. And it didn't really truly recover until the original CEO who stepped down came back.
Came back. Oh, a boomerang executive.
And the day he came back, this is the happy part. This is the not scary part.
Oh.
You would have thought it was a rock star reception. It was incredible.
Wow.
It was incredible. This is all. I'm keeping the names out for the safety of those involved. But this is all. You can Google all of it. It was such a big deal. But those days where we didn't understand why the one bank was taking such a second tier to the other when the other was clearly not as stuffy or elite. And then, of course, the change management folks that had there been a change management team, like Harmonious Workplaces, we may have been in the hallways and the conference rooms and the cafeterias and the lobbies helping people understand that maybe combining these two different cultures, one being the more elite white shoe with the everyday accessible type of banking, could only be good. But there was no one around to do that.
Was any of that explained after the original CEO came back? Was there any sharing or any sort of, okay, we learned some lessons, or here's what we were trying to do, it didn't quite work, and here's where we're going, or none of that?
There was.
So people were just left scratching their heads.
There was not some enormous town hall that said, "Oh, we made a mistake." That was never ever part of the explanation.
Wow.
And what happened to the
The CEO of the
less elite bank CEO?
the leader?
he retired.
Yeah. Oh, he retired. Okay.
Golden parachute,
Wow.
probably.
Yeah, right. Wow. But then the company then rebounded after this new, or this old, for the former person.
I don't know that it suffered in the market as much as it suffered internally.
Internally.
But
yeah.
whatever the result of the merge, it got better when John Mack came back. It was incredible. Yeah. I just had to say his
Drop
name.
the
It makes
name.
me feel
Yeah. Well, that was poetic for sure.
Thank you.
Wow, great. Oh, wow. I don't know if I can top any of those. Mine is very, very, it's very small, and kind of hyper focused to one small little
But
area.
super painful.
But it was super painful.
Okay, just making sure.
Okay, Cheryl's
Yes.
like, as
Oh,
long as
yeah.
it's painful,
Yeah. Super
I
scary.
don't care. Let's do it. Let's rock it. I want to hear pain. I want angst. Well, cool. Why don't we take a break?
All right.
And then you can share your woes, tales of woe and gloom.
Will do. All right. We'll be right back.
Dysfunctional organizational cultures and poorly managed transformations can devastate employee morale and motivation, leading to disengaged employees, poor work quality, and the loss of your best people. The impacts to your organization include high costs, low productivity, and wasted resources. At Harmonious Workplaces, our purpose is to help you build the best workplace possible. We are advisors applying proven organizational development and industrial organizational psychology methodologies to help you become your best organization. We are doers, using time-tested principles to help you execute organizational change initiatives smoothly and successfully. To discover how Harmonious Workplaces can impact your organization, visit www.harmoniousworkplaces.com and book a free 30-minute information session with one of our consultants today. Again, that's www.harmoniousworkplaces.com.
And we're back. So we have been sharing some wicked tales of change management gone awry. And so Ben told his monster story about a kind of Machiavellian dark triad
Master
person
of
that
the
was standing in the way
leader.
of things.
Yes.
Right. And Cheryl was talking about how this this banking operation fell under some pretty poor leadership, and then luckily we had a heroic end to that one, which I was glad to see. Kind of reminds me of like a Del Toro film. At the end, the hero comes back and kind of fixes
Hero's
things.
journey. It was played out right in front of us.
There you go.
On Wall Street, the Wall Street hero's journey.
So my story is a little different. So a long time ago, in a little land not too far from where I'm at in Burbank, Illinois, I was the operations manager for a music retail company, and that music retail company had a competitor about 3 or 4 blocks down. That's important to know because what happened was this company, which is a family-owned business that started in New York, was they decided they needed to make some hefty changes very quickly on their IT side of things. So we rolled out a new ERP system, enterprise resource planning system. Right? Oh, there we go.
There we go. Got it in there. Cannot have an episode
today,
without
right?
an acronym.
It has to be a record on how late it is in the episode.
It's one of the longest we've gone, that's for sure.
That's for sure.
Okay, back to woe and pain. We can't keep Cheryl waiting.
Yes. So we rolled out this system, and we did not get nobody had any say in the process. So everybody learned the old system. They liked the old system. They were diehards for the old system. They really liked it. And when the new system came in and they had to learn it and they couldn't find what they were looking for right away or whatever, they started resorting to trying to get back into the old system. And that caused problems because the data now was feeding into the old system instead of the new system. So now we had a hard time, so from one of the scary parts of this is now we had accounting issues that were happening. And so we had that was one part. The other part is you started to get people who really started to not care so much anymore. So the next part of this was you saw the place, which I actually helped to build. I actually built like the drum department, the risers, all the displays and everything. So I had a lot of pride in that, and there were a handful of us that were there and helped to do all of that, right? But the people who didn't like the new system started to show up to work late, not clean up after themselves. If something happened, they weren't taking care of it. So the place started to look dingier and dingier and started to fall apart a little bit. And as the operations manager, of course, I'm like, oh, this is my nightmare, right?
And also someone who had a lot of pride in the company.
The physical plant is part of my pride.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's on your plate to take care of the facility, but it's typically and hopefully like one of the lower rung concerns. And now this is like creeping up the ladder with this massive other problem.
Right. Well, then the nightmare became a little worse when people decided, hey, the place down the street with the other acronym of GC is hiring. And we don't really want to do what we're doing over here because over there is going to be better. So we started losing people to the competition. And as we would get new people to replace them, we were getting the ones who were coming from the other place that were not as great. So we ended up having we had some discipline problems. We had some accounting issues. We had some issues with inventory control that ended up happening. And eventually it came to a point where some decisions needed to be made, and we had some people that were starting to be let go, which that became a very scary place for people coming into work and not sure whether or not they had a job anymore because of the things that were happening. So I can't say that it got very much better. So I don't have that hero story that ended up happening there, because it really was something that continued. And I think the problem with this was that we never really had a reason why we were changing things. And we certainly didn't have a reason why this was actually a competitive advantage over the other company, which it actually was. But we never had that interaction. That was my first foray into organizational development, and learning how not to do things. I suppose came from that experience. So,
did they keep the software, the new software, and
they did keep the new software, and eventually they turned the old one off. Actually, we ended up having to turn off the old one within 2 days of us realizing
the data was
wait, money's going over into here, on paper it's going into this area. Yeah, right. So we yanked that, but the adoption of the new way of doing things was laboriously slow, and it really heavily involved all of the management, in the location that had to go in and kind of interject themselves into every single sale, which, and what happened was people were like, I don't really want to learn how to do this. So if I can get my manager to do it for me, I don't have to know how to do that. I just have to sell. Right. And that's what it
was. That part of the software, or was that just part of the way the software was adopted?
It was the part of the way the software was adopted. The software actually had, honestly, it was a step up, a considerable step up. It was an Oracle-based system. So it's complicated. It was certainly complicated, but with adequate communication, training, we would have had much better adoption, right? But the reason for doing it was we're just going to do it, right? And that simply isn't enough. This was 1999, end of 1999, early 2000s that this started, and it continued on until 2001 or so.
Oh, wow. That's a long time.
So it's a long time.
Staff were not given any sort of proper training or any incentives to use the new system.
Well, that's where I ended up becoming the regional trainer for the 3 stores that were in this area.
Yeah.
So that did help to some extent, because I became the trainer.
So you were the trainer.
So I would train the other ops managers, and yeah. So that was somewhat helpful, right? But some of that damage was already done with that organizational commitment part. So it it kind of spiraled out for a
Right.
good long while.
God.
And
with
how
some
did you
people.
feel when you realized that you have to be the trainer? Like, oh, there's no training happening, and there's no manuals,
Right.
and there's no time scheduled for it. Who's going to do this?
And there's no extra money in doing this. We just had to get it done. So,
Wow.
yeah, it was. My feelings on it were. I like the idea of teaching. I like that. I didn't like so much the idea of I've also got to field everybody's bad feelings about this. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. You were having to be the culture manager, the trainer, the operations manager, keep an eye on the data, how it was mingling, how money was walking out the door, how employees were leaving, things were getting dirty, and now you had to train it. Hats off
Yep.
to you. That is loyalty.
It was,
Commitment.
but that was the other problem was that how loyal could I stay for very long? I left in 2001.
Did you
So,
get burned out?
you know, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot of other events that ended up happening as a result of that.
Mhm.
But that was the catalyst. So that's my scary story.
Oh, just
That's
horrible.
scary.
Both of your stories just insidious. The toxicity,
Right?
the damage to the workforce, and maybe not directly visible on like a every single customer interaction basis, but it sounds like it was just seeping throughout both of your Cheryl, your bank, Rich, the music store. I mean, just you can always tell when you're dealing with someone who doesn't want to be there, who's phoning it in.
Well, I did work with
who
a
doesn't like the way
CEO.
things work.
Oh,
No, go ahead.
yes. I did work with a CEO who had his entire job was to fix what was broken. He was called a fixer, which is a thing, right?
Mhm.
And on his first time in the office, he took a Sharpie and he wrote across the wall calendars of the previous president, "We're all going to die." Like over and over. I know it was pretty shocking, but then it did make me laugh because I think the point was, are you all being very dramatic with the disaster that your company is in? Yes, you are. I've seen these things before. I'm here now, and we're all going to die was just supposed to give us perspective, I think. But I've never seen a professional senior person do anything like that.
No, not at all.
Especially for people who might not know his sense of humor or what he was trying to get at. I mean, that's a pretty
Which was
bold
all of
statement.
us.
Yeah.
Which was all of
like
us. It
on
was
his
like day
first
one.
day,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
It reminds me of was it Mad Magazine, the one with the gun pointed at the dog by this magazine, or the dog would get it. Jeez, scare tactics and humor. I don't know.
And guns. I don't know.
I get it. Yeah. Well, we're coming up to that time. So, kind of based on the lessons that we learned through our harrowing experiences, what is a tip that you have for somebody to avoid the horrors of bad change?
Based on my own experience, there were things that I wish I had done differently when the pressure was amplified because of bad change management. And the thing that I most often would like to change is how I handled it. And that regulating your own emotional intelligence quotient in these situations, keeping that perspective, not getting so caught up in the microcosm of the pain or the trauma or the drama, and just try to not let that environment predict how you will behave. I'm going to have to look up where I got this, but it's that remote control that is your emotions. Don't give the remote control to someone else, right? Don't give the remote control on your emotions to something or someone else to control your emotions. Right?
Sure.
If anyone listening said that originally, please DM. I will.
We'll find it.
So that's my tip. Be aware of your own hand in the maelstrom.
Makes sense. And mine would be, we got to know the purpose, and we have to keep everybody on track to understand why we're making a change and why we're going this direction, and to have that vision for what that end state is. Because when you don't have that, people disengage.
Yeah, agreed.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Ben?
I don't know if I have a great one. I think some of it is what Cheryl was saying about maybe looking back as an independent consultant, doing things differently. But I would say for people who are at that company, whether it was the bigger or the smaller, or any of these companies where you guys were sharing your stories, is maybe to just take a breath, take a pause, take some perspective of the situation. And, Cheryl, maybe not quite as direct and blunt as your fixer person, but recognize where this falls in the grand scheme of things, and just try to have a little perspective in that way.
Very good.
And
right.
And then jump on your boss's desk and demand why. After you've checked in with yourself. All right. Yes, Rich, you were saying.
I was just going to say, we're at that time. So let's raise a glass and say, until next time, make change your friend.
Thanks for listening to Harmonious Workplaces. You can find Harmonious Workplaces on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and other streaming platforms. We'd love any feedback on whatever channel you find us on. Please rate, like, and share our podcast with your network, and remember to add Harmonious Workplaces to your list of favorites to get notified about each new episode. To contact Rich or Cheryl, please visit www.workbalanceconsulting.com. To connect with Ben, find him on LinkedIn or visit at www.harborsidestrategy.com.